Hello everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion. Whether you're watching live or the recorded version, we're here at the wonderful Clevertouch Showroom in London, and we're joined by a group of esteemed panelists. If you have any questions during the panel, we have the wonderful Nick Barker in the background running things, so feel free to use the Q&A function if you're watching live. Yeah, we'll get to those questions as and when they come in. My name's Ben. I'm the Regional Director for AVIXA UK and Ireland. It's a pleasure to be here doing this event with Clevertouch. And now, before we get the discussion started, we're going to go around the room and let our panelists introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Luke Peters. I work for Richmond, the American University in London, and my job title is Learning Systems and Spaces Technologist.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Mike Sadler. I'm from City St George's University, and I'm AV Design and Commissioning Manager.
Hello, my name is Caroline Carter. I work for Imperial College London. I'm head of AV.
Hi, I'm Adam Harvey, work for the University of Hertfordshire. I'm the AV Solution Architect.
Hi, I'm John Pringle. I'm the Media Technology Manager at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London.
Good stuff. Now, the topic of today's discussion is going to be balancing technology and pedagogy. I wonder if we can start with thinking about what that actually means at each of your institutions. Is it a consideration? And if so, what sort of goes into that thought process? Who wants to kick us off?
I would say that yes, it is definitely a consideration. In fact, I mean, I work for a much smaller university than my fellow panelists here, but every classroom is set up to enable the best possible sort of pedagogy possible in terms of the technology that we're being filmed with now. And I also do online learning tools, which they use in class and online as well. So literally my entire job is spent talking to faculty and making sure that they can teach as well as they can with using technology.
Yeah, I think for us more so recently, it's been important to see technology as an enabler rather than something that must be applied in every single case. So where it supports the pedagogy, it's more important than just having it for the sake of having it. Also, our academics are starting to sort of come back to us and say, this works for me, or this is too complicated, can we just make it simple? And the more simple we can get, the better, because it allows us to get straight into the stuff they're there to deliver.
Yeah, completely agree with Mike said. The simpler it is, the better it is. Otherwise, you're standing in front of 150, maybe more students, and you start clustering. They are, that's the last kind of situation they want to be in. We need to make sure that what we're putting in is fit for purpose. But also getting feedback from them is really important. So sometimes one department will teach differently to another department, but you're still trying to make it very samey across the board, so people can walk into any lecture data and go, this is how we teach. So there needs to be some flexibility within it, but you still need to make it very simple.
Yes, same with us. I mean, we've got two different sector spaces really. General teaching, which they're all standardised, providing a level of technology across every space that's the same. So depending on where people go, they don't have any issues just walking from one room to the other. Specialist spaces are dependent on where they sit and what was being taught in them. So we try and keep the standard in there, but obviously there's a lot of variation depending on what you're teaching.
And yes, I mean, I work for a very small institution, again, specialist institution. So our institution has a sort of quite strong blend of audiovisual technology, but also specialist theatre technology. So it's a different kind of mix there. And, obviously we have teaching displays and that suite of equipment, but also very important to us is flexible and deployable equipment that the students can use in the class as well. So it's not necessarily just a lecturer-led facility.
As AV technologists and specialists in the higher ed space and being so close to that sort of faculty and pedagogical sort of environment, obviously I think we can all say that the technology that we work with moves very quickly, it evolves quickly, it's always growing. Do kind of pedagogical theories and strategies, do they change as well and kind of evolve as quickly as the technology does as well? Or is there kind of a sort of disconnect in terms of that? And if so, how do we sort of realign those two to make sure we're not just racing forward with all the newest tech, but leaving the pedagogy behind?
I think it depends on, as I'm sure my fellow panelists get to, it depends on who's teaching and what their needs are. So like everybody else said, trying to keep it as simple as possible for those who just want to do a PowerPoint on a screen, etc. But also the way of teaching changes based on the technology that comes in. So we've gone from being a university that mainly was projectors on ceilings and laptops going through that, and then we put lots of Clevertouch screens, and the way they use the digital whiteboards, for example, and the QR codes sort of bit, that wasn't available to them before, and is a really useful, genuinely useful tool to that they can teach their classes, and the students can save the work and stuff like that. So we sort of follow them, but with the new technology that we bring in, their styles and approaches change as well, which I think is what it's meant to be, because otherwise. I will say that people were terrified of the new technology when it first came in, and great Nick Barker came in and gave them a talk and put the calm down a bit, and they've really adopted and adapted. So I think both sort of symbiotic, basically.
Big plugs for Clevertouch then.
Yeah, sorry. We are Clevertouch. People say Clevertouch instead of interactive screens, so they're one in our university.
Yeah. We've had to move a very large portion of staff out of South Kensington campus, move them over to White City into very much their own purpose built support office, should we say, which is on the campus. It's about a 5-10 minute walk from it. And with that, we actually got the opportunity of trying different things, which was really good. And so it's now gone beyond teaching. It's not just about teaching, it's also talking about the standard of meeting rooms, the standards of how you do a hybrid meeting. And that could be from a student to staff, but we want to make sure that pedagogy is there for the meeting rooms as well. So that when people walk in, they go, oh no, Jesus. So let's say we've got 450 class meeting rooms, and we've now got 30 of them all set up in the same way, which makes it very simple. We don't let them, we try not to let them use cables too much because they get confused of where to put the cables or how the cables work. So we try and get them to invite the room, and then all they have to do is the room joins it, you join the room joins the meeting, and suddenly you've got a perfect meeting with great microphones and everything else. That has gone down so well that has now been written into the pedagogy about how meeting rooms and I suppose seminar spaces should be set up. So we now want to try and centralise all of those, which we did before, to enable everybody to have the same experience, and it will be a good experience. So it's kind of gone now above and beyond teaching, which is actually quite exciting, because we never really used to get involved with those spaces.
I think for us, with the exception of a few champions that push the technology within the teaching spaces, it's more a case pedagogy is much more slowly than technology, and there's a risk of picking a technology and it's a solution looking for a problem, and there's a danger of sort of deciding to be technology and implementing it everywhere, and then realising that no one really uses it, they're on board with it, and they don't get it, and then you've ended up starting to roll it out, and because we've got a relatively large campus, by the time we get around to every room, could be up to 5-6 years if we hit every space. By that point, that technology's moved on, so you have to really be sure that the technology you're getting behind is fit for purpose and actually, as I said before, supports pedagogy.
And that sort of links into what you were saying earlier about, it's important not to just get something for the sake of it. This technology has come out, or this product has evolved, let's get this new thing. But I suppose as a larger university, larger organisation or institution, you've potentially got that luxury of doing the things that maybe smaller ones don't necessarily have. Do you ever see the sort of the opposite thing, which is we need this, but we can't afford it, and we can't sort of convince the powers that be to spend the money on it, when actually it isn't just something for the sake of it. It is really, could potentially really enhance the pedagogical process and then the teaching experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
We moved campus, so for me it was a great excuse to just change everything, and that's why we built the Clevertouch route to at least go the same, to keep everything as simple as same, so everybody understands each classroom. There's definitely less classrooms than you guys, but which makes it a bit easier. But that was entirely the point. Had we not moved campus, it's possible I would have spent the next few years begging for little bits of money here and there for nice interactive screens or whatever. But we just did the whole thing in one, which was great for me, but more to the point for the people that were there. And I agree with what you said about meeting rooms as well. It's got, you know, everywhere's got to be easy, quick, and then we use it, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem's kind of flipped. Like Caroline alluded to, it's a scale problem. So if you've got a big institution and you've got a very, very popular piece of technology, everyone, we want to do that in every room, you know, and like Mike said earlier, to the amount of time it's going to take to roll that out with budget considerations and actual installation considerations, that's quite difficult. So we kind of work on the core principles that, you know, everybody needs to see and hear what's going on in a teaching room, whether they're in the room or they're not, with the, you know, the introduction of hybrid after the pandemic. The biggest thing I think at the moment is about the collaboration. We're moving very much away from somebody standing at the front of the room and just, you know, spouting information to a more collaborative group working scenario. So how do we replicate that? You know, that's not necessarily really about audio visual technology. I mean, it's a host of different products to make all of those students get that same experience wherever they are and be able to collaborate online and in the room and remotely and all that sort of stuff. So I think the core principles are, can you see, can you hear, can you collaborate with, depending on where you are, and then you kind of work from there, building out specialist bits and pieces in with it as well.
John, from your side, have you had that sort of struggle in terms of sort of making the case for money to spend on technology that you think will enhance the experience?
I mean, I think I can reflect in two different ways there. So in the current role I'm in, we're actually on the cusp of making big capital bids to completely renovate the infrastructure on the campus, because there was a lot of sort of make do amend over COVID. You know, so a lot of stuff was introduced, and actually now we need to try and establish a kind of uniform installation that you folks have in your institutions. Previously at other universities I've worked at, we have been in that situation. And what actually made a big difference there was organisational connection between AV and IT departments. So where you had AV departments or faculty-based AV, which were working in a very kind of parochial way, as soon as the connection was made in some shape or form to the university-wide IT department, then suddenly the whole methodology of how things were funded and also the credibility of what you were arguing was raised. So, you know, I had that experience where suddenly from having to make a kind of annual argument about, you know, what I want to introduce, making my own individual bids, we're into a situation where actually £2 million a year is going to be allocated to AV refresh. And there's a commitment now that, you know, we're going to refresh these assets every 5 years. So I think that's the kind of level that you need to establish in terms of an organisational level. You need to get that level of senior management at a board level. This is understood to be a very core activity within the university and essential to the delivery of teaching and learning. If you don't manage to get that buy-in, I think, I'm guessing my fellow panelists here have that buy-in there, but it's not universal. I'm sure there might be people watching online who are in that situation. That's where you have to lobby. That's very difficult if you're down there as a manager in audiovisual, but it's just making that case to whoever you can when you get the opportunity.
I think bringing in faculty helps as well. It helps with us in the office, distinctly smaller, but we did a sort of pilot where we had a touch screen in one classroom before we moved campus. Got sort of people who were quite interested in the technology to use it. And then the sort of word spread that it wasn't quite so scary and it was quite easy to use and useful. And then so once it appeared in every classroom, people were already aware of what was going on. So it made it a lot easier, I think. So people, I appreciate that's a little bit harder with lots of people, but that really works fast working with faculty. So the ones using it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it's probably good as well to have it from multiple areas, because obviously, you know, the cynical sort of observer would say, oh yeah, you know, you would be saying you need more tech, you would be saying that because you're in charge of tech, and you know, you want all the latest new gadgets and toys and stuff. But if you, as you say, if you can get faculty to buy into it as well and present that case from multiple angles to whoever it might be, whatever your conduit to the board is, then I suppose that's a good way to sort of try and release some funds.
Yeah, also you can generally find out if it works for them or
Yeah.
doesn't, you know.
Academic engagement is usually important, and we found that increasingly the more you have on board, the more successful the project's likely to be. But also we aren't, I'll admit, I'm not a pedagogical expert, I don't know the best way to deliver teaching with a particular style, and if you get people who are experts in that, they can point things out to you probably would never consider. So you can easily get a bit of technology that will do something, but it might not do it in the right way, the way that it needs to be taught. So yeah, it's just really important to get the academics on board.
I completely agree. It has to be right, academically.
Yes.
I actually run a committee, very catchy title, AV and Digital Media Committee. And actually, we talk about technology that goes into rooms, we talk about rooms that need to be upgraded, we talk about why they need to be upgraded, because, you know, running over 1,000 rooms, when you're trying to upgrade a room, hold on a minute, why hasn't this room, we look at room data, and we look at how often it's being used throughout the year. Let's say that, you know, it's got old technology in it, why hasn't been used? Is it the fact that it's the wrong decor, or is it the fact the air conditioning is not right? So, you know, we have to look at going above and beyond just about technology in the room to make sure that works. But then actually having academics behind it, the right ones, they're very, we want to test something, you know, can we go and try it out? We did have a demo space, we're hoping to get it back, but because of all the shuffles and the moves, we don't have it at the moment, which makes life quite difficult. So you can't get the academics in to try something, and then you can't get their feedback. And the last thing you want to do is put it to a live space where they go quite something wrong. So we haven't done that recently. But you know, you do need to get their feedback, otherwise you'll end up putting the wrong thing in the wrong room. But then you've also got to think about the departments who are specialised and how you're going to code them. And that's actually what I find quite difficult, is how you'll keep standardisation with the specialists that go on. Like whether you've got, you know, medicine against physics, two very different departments, how do you keep them standardised?
I suppose as well, it's you know, a lot of manufacturer suppliers of this technology, they tout the expression customer-led design, and they talk about this feedback. But if they're really going as far as the technology managers, the end users, as it were, that's, you're not really the true end user. It's in a higher ed setting. It's the faculty. So you could say to, you know, Clevertouch and say, oh, it would be great if we could do this, but you're looking at it from a tech point of view. The faculty would be looking at it from a completely different point of view, and to have that engagement, I suppose, with people who would happily come to you and say, hey, I was wondering if it's possible to do this. Like, is there a technology that can do that? You can then pass that information on, and like you're saying with medicine, for example, you know, sort of a camera on a stick that you can sort of like move into an anatomical setting, whatever. I suppose, yeah, that's when the engagement really becomes important, right?
Yeah, we're just doing a dissection lab at the moment, and the brief that came back from them was they really wanted to have something like a GoPro that could put on their head, and then they will actually live stream. So we managed to cobble something together. But it's going to work a lot on that. It actually happened in any other way apart from on paper.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting to try things like this.
Absolutely.
So watch this space.
Yeah, it's just like, I guess I would hazard a guess that the whole idea of like, like the document cameras and stuff like that didn't come from like necessarily one of us just going, oh yeah, it'd be fun if you could see a document really clearly, we're thinking maybe bigger picture, whereas an academic or someone from faculty might have said, I want to show this, but I don't want to hold it up to the camera. I want it to be quick, clear, easy to see.
We're kind of like technology conduits in a way, aren't we?
Yeah.
So the academics or other members of the communities, they come up with these. I want to be able to do this, and send it to us, and then because we've got a bit of a insight of the market, we can look at that, and we tend to do a few times like showcases. So particularly if there's a particular technology that people want, we'll get a few examples of it in, we'll give it to the academics, we'll let them play with it, and then which one suits your teaching the best, and then we can go forward that way. But it does work the other way as well. So the manufacturers they can feed into that. What do your academics think of this that we've come up with? Is that good? Is that something that can go to market, will be successful?
Yeah, very cool. The whole sort of COVID and hybrid things we mentioned a couple of times, and obviously at a certain point in time, a few years ago, it was absolutely essential for a lot of institutions. Where are we with it now? But does anybody still offer hybrid? I mean, I know that you guys are more from stuff like the traditional institutions. John, yours is a lot more sort of like experience where you need to sort of be there in person. So I'm just keen to see where you are. Do you still use it? Are the technologies you implemented as they still being used?
I mean, a lot of what the university is now came from, obviously we all know there's not another pandemic, but a lot of it came from that. We were hideously unprepared for people who was prepared for the pandemic. But I was having to add it with tiny little cameras and lecture halls and all that sort of thing. Nobody wanted to do it, but they became better at it as time went on. And now it's become a thing that we do. And like you guys are all saying, it's the hybrid thing is vital now. And also for things like guest lecturers who can't actually be there in person, it's obviously a lot easier to jump on a Zoom or Teams meeting. So everything is about that sort of flexibility, and it all came from COVID really, because before it was be there, is a projector on the ceiling and is a laptop.
And was it not sort of, because the technology was there?
Yes, it was there, the money was.
Yeah, the money, yeah. But the difference between, as you say, like that example you used of getting guest lecturer in, there's money. I don't know if the university pays for them to come in. There's a money question.
They did. Whether they do for the guest lectures who are online, I'm not sure about. But I think the more to the point, you want these guest lecturers to be people in business and industry or whatever. They haven't always got time to come to Northwest London where we're based, and an hour out of their day is a lot easier than 3 hours of meeting and stuff. So these happen every day now, and I'm really glad that they do. So I think that's what the students want as well, to be in touch with someone who's in the industry that they're trying to get into. So
That's actually a better model of teaching as well, because I think it tends to work better where you're broadcasting an academic out to many people, rather than trying to capture an academic in a room to lots of people online. It's sort of if you can kind of beam that academic into a room where lots of people are listening and interact with them, it tends to work as a better kind of delivery method than having the academic in the room trying to interact with lots of tiny faces in a window online.
yeah, it's just tricky to telling them how to talk to the screen and actually learn in class. It's a skill.
But then also with the model, when you have got somebody in the room and you've got lots of people in the room and you've got lots of people online, actually managing that is very difficult from the external point of view. So you need somebody probably to manage the external people, and that kind of raises more costs of. We had co-pilots for a long time, and they were brilliant. They managed everybody online. They were fantastic.
Actually managed the meeting.
Yeah. So the academic who was teaching in the room with certain people, however many was in the room, they could just concentrate on the room. And then when there were questions, the co-pilot would make sure that the person online wasn't left out. So it was a much more seamless way of doing it. Otherwise, it could cost me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just me. So.
Yeah.
What about at Hearts? I mean, are you going to be refreshing the stuff that you put in for like hybrid and pandemic stuff, or is it kind of just now sitting there if it's necessary to not
Yeah,
use?
I think that's the case. We lecture capture anyway, so to actually make the rooms available to, broadcast remotely is fine. I think for us, it's not the norm to do it. Now we want students on campus, it's a bit empty if they're not there. So our exec team sort of, said to everybody involved in course delivery to try and to look at all the courses and, make them blended and flexible. But, the teaching room is only a very, very small part of that. So, we tend to just encourage all our students to come to site, but, it is there if we need it. And some courses, I think law for us, they're very, very heavily online. Others, they do it as and when.
How about you, John, on your where you are? That it's as we were discussing earlier, it's quite a sort of essentially in-person sort of a physical environment. How did the hybrid thing manifest itself for you, and then where are you with it now?
I mean, for us, as a specialist institution, we're as I said before, we're currently looking at complete refresh of everything on campus, but we don't traditionally lecture capture. So that's going to be an interesting question when we come to procurement, because there's less argument then for higher end facilities within the rooms. But similarly to Richmond, for us, the real value is actually bringing people in.
Mm-hmm.
So, the courses that we run, they might be wanting to talk to someone in Ukraine or Thailand, someone who's a specialist in a very particular area of theatre or community practice, or and having that ability to bring someone in at really high quality into the room is a huge lift. And you do, and it has been a definite benefit post-COVID, that the ability to sort of reach out to academic or professional practitioners all over the world and bring them into the studios, and to make that nice and easy. As you say, if you're a director, you could potentially have an hour break in your rehearsals,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go and you can do that seminar with the students. Whereas if you were trying to organise them to come to London, not only the cost but just the practicality of that just doesn't work. So in terms of building those networks and relationships with other academics and practitioners, it's really invaluable from that perspective. And that maybe isn't something we thought, or a lot of institutions thought about. I think after COVID, there was a lot of discussion about we're going to change the way we run all our courses. Actually, certainly from my perspective, we haven't gone down that route, but we have found something that's enriching from introducing these technologies into the classroom.
Do you feel that in general at each of your institutions, the student learning experience has benefited from all this new technology, or do you feel that there are elements of it where it's kind of suffered a little bit, and maybe it is still suffering, you're trying to kind of roll stuff back and get the balance right in terms of how much tech you put into a teaching space?
No, I think it's benefited. I mean, like I said, it went from a very basic level to this sort of setup, and like I said, people can use it on a basic level if they want to. You just want to do your PowerPoint, you turn it on the laptop, it will magically appear on the screen and off you go. But things like we're all talking about here with the guest lectures, and it just gives everybody that flexibility, and because it's there, and once people see it being used, and a lot of it is sort of word of mouth. Some faculty can be very, nobody wants to stand up in front of a class and look like an idiot. Basically, that's the bottom line. And including all of us, I'm sure that it's our jobs sometimes. But if you can reassure people that it's simple and that things work, and whatever they want to do can be done easily, then it really starts to sort of grow like a tree with it. And it really has in the last few years for us. These guys are obviously a bit more established, but I've noticed a big change. It's very positive. I hope people don't mind what to do as well. They better.
Yeah.
I think we perhaps it's tipped a little bit of the way for us. So particularly in rooms where we had to introduce hybrid that already had existing teaching systems and presentation systems where you then lump the hybrid technology on top of it, and that introduces complexity and then reduces simplicity of using the system. And whenever you just want technology to work, but when it doesn't, you sit in front of yourself and a group of people. I think that the student and academic experience dips a little bit as a result of us having by necessity to introduce extra technologies that certainly not all of them, because we didn't hypervise every single classroom, but the ones that did get done are notoriously less reliable than the other ones. So there is a point, I think, and we're sort of getting a second bite of the apple now, where we can review those rooms and kind of try and work out, okay, how do we keep the functionality but make them simpler and more reliable.
Yeah, we've got some rooms which are notoriously difficult to manage, support, and there's a lot going on with them. They have been built on for years, so you kind of have a setup, let's say 7 years ago, that you installed, which was simple, and then they constantly different. They must be out, they must be out. You got to the point where actually you don't really know what bit of equipment you when.
Yeah.
So it could be anything from, kind of back 7 years to the last year. And actually you just have to say, at some point, can't do anything else. But we've actually looked at some stats of how much more complex and how much more support these typically give my team. And it's about 20 to 25% extra per year of calls that we have for just these complex hybrid rooms. So we are trying to look at them to make them more cost effective, but of course that comes with budget. And that's the problem.
That's the way partly to pitch it, isn't it? With the better equipment that's simple, you can cut the
Yeah,
costs of
the
stuff.
problem is we'd have to do at least 6 or 7 of the rooms at the same time, and that's going to be at least plus 6 figures.
Yes, your budgets are distinctly bigger than mine, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think everybody's hybrid Mark 1 teaching rooms were a bit, cobbled together.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously we had supply issues as well as everything else going on. So
Yes.
they're maybe not as perfect as they could be. And there is a bit of a learning curve for the academics to use them. They're not quite as simple as the others. However, from the student experience, having the flexibility around that, you're offering a better product at the end of the day to the students. You going to university isn't cheap. Postgrads and everybody coming into university, they may have to get jobs, they may have to work around family and stuff like that. So just being able to deliver that teaching a bit more flexibly than you have to be in that teaching room from 9 till 4, that just makes the experience better for everybody, I think.
I think, part of the conversation you have to have with academic staff or senior executives or administrators is that we are in this accelerating period of technological change. I mean, you've probably worked on 30 odd years plus in university AV, and there's never been a period which is as accelerated as it is now in terms of the technologies, in terms of the risk of choosing the right thing, and knowing that next year something completely revolutionary might come out which is going to blow it out of the water. And so that sometimes is one of those things that we have to kind of communicate to people and just say, look, things are changing really quickly. We've got all these options and going to have even more options next year. And let's look at the core of what we want to achieve rather than necessarily the specific technology. But it is difficult. I think we sometimes have to kind of just reflect back if we can't quite get things right, that it is really difficult. It's not us struggling. It's actually a really difficult thing to manage. And in the meantime, everyone is used to their phone, which is this incredibly integrated thing, which has got, millions of hours of AI sort of and user interface development going on it, and and everyone's used to that, and they can kind of use that, and then they want that level of simplicity and familiarity in these other systems that we're installing. So it is a challenge.
Yeah,
AI will solve everything for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do I.
I want to pick up on something as well that Adam said about the sort of the teaching experience as opposed to the learning experience, because obviously the technology doesn't just affect the students, it affects the faculty as well. And, you know, quite refreshingly so far, it sounds like you've all got fairly good relationships with the faculty, and you can kind of have those conversations and sort of the back and forth feedback. Do you have any sort of experience, and if so, how you dealt with a situation where you had faculty who were resistant to digital? Yes, and maybe not necessarily just out of pig-headedness, but just maybe when you dug down a little bit, just because they were a bit overwhelmed by it. And yes, and if so, how you kind of got around?
An obvious one for me was when we first arrived at the new campus and we took all these nice screens or whatever. As you guys will know, you've got digital whiteboards on touch screens, and other screens. I still had people asking me, like, almost in a hushed way, "Have you got any flip charts out the back?" And I did it a few times, and then I just refused. And I said, let me show you how easy it is to get the whiteboard up. Now you can have multiple screens, and you know, it's a sort of 10-20 second lesson. It's not something they really get to concentrate on too much. And so most of those people now move to the light, as it were, and use the digital. I mean, people are just don't look like an idiot. Some people, and then they're used to the whiteboards that were on the walls and all that sort of thing. So once they got them past that stage, then they'll use every day all the time. I see them use it.
I thought you were going to say you came in and somebody had written all over the board with the.
I have had that as well. To be very calm and go outside and calm myself down. Yes, I have had someone literally with a bar and trying to do it. Yeah, I don't want to say anything about that. Yeah, it's a trying moment.
Yeah.
I think when we've drilled down into it, there's very few that are resistant to the technology, really. It's the change is the issue, and it's not necessarily they don't want to change. It's that, you know, everybody's busy. They've all got teaching programs to do. It's to change the way they deliver their teaching to incorporate new technology. That can be the overwhelming. It's like I just don't have time to change what I've done for the whole. You know, I've got a year's worth of stuff prepped, and now I've got to use something different, and that's where the resistance is. But it's like you said, once you start to break it down and then make it not so scary, and you know, this will help in the long run. Now that's where you kind of get the buy-in for it. But it is, you know, everyone's just, you know, chuck another bit of technology. You know, you've got to do it with this now rather than that, and all of their stuff is prepped the old way. That's where you get the digging the heels in.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of it is they do it. They've always used this. So whether you look at Teams or Zoom, they've always used Zoom, so they can't use Teams. It doesn't do the same. Well, it does, just actually it's a bit different or in a different way. But they're very reluctant to move away from it because that's how they've always done it. Trying to get them to change is challenging, and sometimes you can't. And that's true.
I think there's an aspect of needing a horse to water.
Yeah.
But the key is communication, training and guidance, and as long as you've got those elements in place, most things get through eventually. We're at the moment we're in the process of changing our GUI for our control system touch panels, and it's radically different to the look and feel of the old touch panel. So we've been very careful about the way we've introduced it. We've not gone big bang and introduced it everywhere. We've been very clear about communication, which rooms have it, which rooms don't, and provided online and in room guidance on how to use it and training for those academics. So we can put a training session in place and people either come or won't, but if you offer it, that's as much as we can do. So it's one of those things. People get used to it.
Having a place where people can, if you can record that training as well,
Yeah.
where people can look at this quietly and guys, like and Nick came in, Clevertouch, we recorded what we did, and last year was a full house. A lot of people did turn up, but I also recorded it, put it on our VOD platform, and people were able to look at it. Because sometimes people are just shy about it.
I must say we've done a lot of that recently, not me personally, but we've done that with our communications team. Actually, we've recorded how you use certain elements of a touch panel, or how you set up an Octo, or if it's a personal recorder, you know, how you actually just navigate the touch panel.
Yeah.
And then we have somebody kind of going, if you press this button and that button, and it's kind of, you know, probably talking a minute or 2 minutes of how to navigate that bit, and then you have another section of how to navigate that bit. And actually that's gone down a lot better than having help sheets.
Yeah, but I think what people are increasingly responsive in the material.
Yeah.
I think there's an importance as well in the institutions which have been kind of most successful, are the one that I've worked in, and the ones that have employed learning technologists either in a kind of university-wide role or in a faculty-specific role. And there is something different there that role can do, which is not just about looking at how things are operationally, but actually talking one-to-one with the lecturer about their practice, what they want to deliver, and talk about not only the technology, but also that kind of pedagogical theory, and discuss maybe where the university itself is going, because nearly every institution now will have a teaching and learning lead. They will have their own vision of where they want everything to go. So I think that's another important part. We can deliver all the systems, we can provide operational information, but there's also that kind of interim role as well, which is really important and should be a really important part of our matrix when we're looking at delivering these systems.
I agree with that, because I've worked with such a small institution, I'm kind of both those one guy, but it does make it easier for you guys to interact and find out exactly specifically what people need and want, and also to give them ideas that they didn't know about.
I think one thing I find difficult, and probably the large institutions do, is that when you're designing new technology for, let's say, new buildings, it's how you weigh up how it looks aesthetically to how it actually is practically. So you do get people going, well, that's really good, and it has to look very nice, and you'll just kind of go, it's not practical. And also how to get people to listen to the experts, because they do think that they know better than others. And that's actually, and usually when that happens, they end up backtracking and going, actually, you weren't right. Let's do what you said at the beginning. And that's what I find difficult. But that's usually on main, kind of buildings, designing new, a lot of new rooms at a time, or moving people into new spaces.
Yeah, you're right. When we moved, one of the things was that all the screens had to be on the trolleys, because we're going to be flexible. We're going to move.
Flexible.
It's very few of them have moved since.
The word flexible comes out all the time. Everything has to be flexible, but yet again with flexibility, everything it becomes a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
You're talking about all these flexible rules, so you can have an open space, and who's managing this?
Yeah, that's the other thing, because you're trying to move desks and chairs
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That leads quite nicely into my next question, which is about digital accessibility and inclusion. And I'd love to know at each of your institutions how adequate you think the time given to that subject when they're making sort of tech decisions is, and if there's anybody who's watching who feels like their institution is lagging behind on that. How, in your experience, do you know that you're doing enough, if you do think you're doing enough to make sure the technology is inclusive and accessible?
Yeah, I can't say that was a large part of the conversation. Like, what I can say, and I don't know if you guys come across this as well, but one of the things we have with the hybrid learning, and a lot of it's done sometimes via the Teams on Zoom, but another thing we use called Class is, the whole thing is about student engagement and interaction, getting students to switch their cameras on and stuff like that, so the poor lecturer isn't sitting there talking to a blank screen is one of the key things that I try and work on, because, and things like Mentimeter to get quizzes and stuff, just to make people engage, because that's half the battle with. I go to a university if you just want to sit there and just take it in and turn your camera off. The whole point is engaging and critical thinking and stuff. So we and I talk a lot about that side of it. it's going better, but there still seems to be this thing about not turning cameras on and stuff, which there's only so much you can do about, but it's a big factor because I know that in COVID, a lot of the lecturers really struggled with that, just their laptop and not being able to see anybody that they were talking to. So on that level, we've made a lot of effort.
I think probably working for a small university, you probably get more insightful things to like that, whereas
Yeah.
I don't get the problem when the student turns their camera on or off,
No,
unfortunately, so,
fair enough.
yeah. But I do agree with that though. When I'm meeting, some people don't turn their cameras on, I get cross,
Yeah,
because I like to see people's faces and I like to see how they're reacting.
yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit cultural,
Yeah.
university cultural thing.
Yeah.
In terms of digital accessibility in general, it's something that's for us, it's only come in very recently. We've just had someone appointed in our educational technology team, who's the digital accessibility lead. But it's never something that's ever been given specific focus. When we were redesigning our touch panel GUI, we made a concerted effort to make sure that the met the visual guidelines of colour balance and icon size, all that sort of stuff. And it's something we are giving consideration to in designing new spaces, so the size of buttons on panels, physical stuff like that. And then in terms of the classroom technology, the hearing assisted hearing technology, that sort of stuff. But it's all for us to be quite late on. I think part of the problem is that it's such a silo thing that no one really takes responsibility for it. There isn't one area that sort of goes, right, okay, I'll take that on, I'll deal with it. Some of it sits within state, some of it sits within IT, some of it's, it's sort of spread around and no one really is taking responsibility for it. So recently for us, anyway.
I've been leading it for quite a while, and we have been installing rise and fall lecterns for many years. It is funny when you get rise and fall lecterns, and people say, "Oh, we need to have that for people who are kind of wheelchairs, and you're just coming in, but you've got 6 steps you have to get up. Let's think about the people who have other disabilities, not just that." And we do a mixture of copper under the floor to sennheiser, and now we're putting in, I can't remember what it's called, Aura. We're putting that as well, so we're going to have 3 types over campus. And we literally put it everywhere. So I would say at least 80% of our lecture theatres have that kind of accessibility. When there's a specific case, like we've had one recently where somebody's partial sighted needed to have a camera which fed what was showing up on the blackboard to a laptop. We bring something up for just this one student, and that's quite nice to do actually, so you can think outside the box, which is really good. But yeah, we have been doing this for a long time. I've worked very heavily with our disabilities department, who are very reactive and responsive to ideas on how we come up with things. So yes, it's something which is, I believe that Peel's actually now good at.
And is that something that you think there is also the sort of the proactive approach as well in terms of surveying students and making sure, because I think often people who maybe have different abilities will not want to step forward and say, I need this, because it's difficult, it can be uncomfortable to do so, but creating the environment where that is able to be done, is that important?
It's very important. And as far as I've seen, we do, if a student needs it, they will ask for it, which is good. I know that as far as I know, a student doesn't have to declare any disability until they turn up at the university. So you're not given that, oh, okay, they're hard of hearing, we need to get them into a lecture theatre, or whatever it is. You can't suddenly be proactive with the timetable. You've got to change the timetable when they arrive on campus. And that I think is quite difficult. But 9 times out of 10, as far as I know, they are very good at saying, I need this or I need that. And then the departments are good at either helping or getting us out there.
Yeah, I'd say the same, Carol. I think the student knows to get the best out of their experience at university. If they've got particular needs, that they need to identify it, so the university can do everything it can to assist in that, which is great. I mean, we're the same. You know, you're hearing assistants and stuff all over the place. So, you know, we've kind of, you know, all the standard stuff is covered. We're doing a project at the moment where we've got a high percentage of students neurodiverse. So that's fed in quite a lot to the room design and what we're doing in the room, just to make sure that everybody's comfortable in there. So that's kind of a newer thing for us to look at. So, you know, that's sort of made us think about, do we need to be considering that a little bit more in our standardisation of rooms and stuff like that, just to make sure that we're not, you know, doing anything that's gonna, you know, be an issue for certain people. So, yeah, that's something that will grow, I think, now.
Yeah.
Good start. We're coming towards the end of our time now, so I want to check in with Nick, find out if we have any questions on the fire end. Nick, can you hear us?
Yeah, likewise. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, good stuff. Excellent. So yeah, just one of the questions just come in, lots of feedback received, which is great. Just on the kind of more sort of the student experience. So there's been some chat about sort of the academic kind of experiences and what they want in terms of technology, but is there any sort of feedback gained? One of the questions here is sort of on the sort of student feedback from maybe their experiences in sort of further education and school, and any kind of technologies that they're maybe expecting at university, that feedback gets kind of raised or gathered in some way. Someone's asked.
Let's do that.
Well, I think that for starters, a lot of students have obviously gone through their education, their number of education experience in things like touchscreens or whatever. So I think it's kind of expecting now. So I don't think any of them are shocked by it in terms of the day-to-day use, things like being able to classroom or phone onto the screen, stuff like that. They're not. So I think the younger generation are far more technically literate as normally and demanding as they should be. So, you know, on that level, it's been good.
I think that's where it comes down to the younger generation of moving into, let's say, the academic world. They like to explore technology and they like to be able to do things. Remember that this comes down to standardizations and actually making it really simple. Whereas you can use it, like you said, for PowerPoint, or you can take it one step further. So you design a room with simplicity in mind.
I think I noticed a bit of a shift from people asking, can I do, to why can't I do? So I think that expectation that, you know, the rooms and, you know, all the technology around the university should be at a particular standard, because like I say, they've come through education and it's, you know, they've got it everywhere, they've got it at home, they've got it in their pocket. You know, if we're not providing that, then there's something wrong, really. So that's happened over the last few years. It's like, you know, why can't I do this? Yeah, the expectation is I walk up to any screen and interact with it, right? But you see that. I mean, I see that with my kids. You know, they walk up to screens everywhere and start poking them. You know, it's just absolutely what is normal.
Well, they start telling you how to do things.
Well, yeah, that's not the way.
So I think there's also something about students being used to the technology demanding specific space from university. So in the last few years, I've seen an increase in students wanting small meeting rooms, wanting pods that they can go into, because one of the big things about hybrid is that there are a lot of kind of one-to-one meetings between tutors or small group meetings that are happening online. The students having to combine that with on-campus activity. So the demand that I'm seeing from students is less about technology, more about finding the space for that technology to be used in that's suitable for them.
Totally agree. I mean, everybody learns and studies in such a different way. I mean, we've got a lot of different environments, you know, individual, small group, big group, you know, open space, quiet areas. You know, we try and provide a huge range of different environments to make sure that, you know, everybody's got their, you know, their happy place.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thank you, Nick, for that question from the audience. We've almost run out of time, but before we do, one final question I have for our panel here is there anything on the horizon in terms of what you think might be the next frontier in ed tech that you think could genuinely transform higher education rather than just sort of digitize it?
I think there's only one answer, is AI. It's the way it's changing, because I'm more involved on the sort of learning technology side of it as well. I see students, just been assigned their essay, they are on ChatGPT and all that sort of thing, and so trying to find new methods of assessing students, so you can't, in other words, you've got to stand up in front of the screen, you've got to explain what you're talking about to the point that ChatGPT there, which you're going to look like an idiot standing if you don't know your stuff, and you can't keep looking at your phone and repeating what AI says. So I think that is what I hear every day for the last couple of years now, and I'm sure that will just go on and on. It's changing all of our lives, isn't it?
But it has revolutionised meeting minutes.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing.
But you are good with that.
I think that's the difficult thing, because it's in everything, and it will be in absolutely everything. So it's, the big thing is about managing what that looks like for everybody. Yeah, I think that's going to be a interesting few years.
Yeah, it's definitely my favourite phrase or sort of expression I've heard recently. It was at a conference I was at, and the conversation turned naturally to, "Oh, AI is going to take my job," kind of thing. And certainly there'll be certain industries where it does definitely sort of affect that greatly. But one person sort of suggested that it's not AI that's going to take certain jobs. It's somebody who learns about AI, harnesses it, and learns how to sort of work with it is going to take your job. And that could be you. And I wonder how you think that relates to specifically ed.
Hang on to my job for as long as possible. I'm not sure how AI can do a lot of it, but like I just said, literally within our VLE, there's AI options. Everybody knows what ChatGPT and all the rest of them are. Every learning tool that I bring in has an AI element to it. And as you just said, it's about getting people to use it better. It's a tool. And, a bit sort of, some people are a bit scared of it, and I understand why they might be, but we're going to have to learn to use it for our benefit, and people are increasingly. It's gone in the last 2 years. It's gone from I don't want it to happen to okay, let's embrace this thing. I mean, when I do a talk about the technology and stuff, I literally create a course in the time it takes me to say the sentence. I'm creating a course now. And they all go, yeah, but that's rubbish. And I was thinking, it's a start, isn't it? You can then adapt it to what you need it to be and change it. And I'm not trying to say this is how you should create your course. I'm trying to say this is a starting point and to take it from there. And a lot of them, something you look at me like I'm the devil, and some of them look at me like, get your point, and that's a great tool. So it's the same thing.
My colleague I work with is very heavily into AI. So he's built primarily our AV design ChatGPT thing. So it's loading everything into it. All the AVIXA standards are in it, all our projects are in it, stuff like that. So we can ask it any questions like, that room you're doing, can we just, what size of the screen we need in the front of the room? It'll spit the answer out. You do need to check it, obviously, at the moment, but it's just trying to, develop the tools to be able to be useful. And actually, things like that are proving to be quite interesting to look at. So, we kind of ask it the questions on design, go back and verify what it's doing. But the more information that goes in and more questions we ask, the better it gets. But yeah, it's quite cool.
I think, and also specifically relevant to this group is the teaching side of things. And one thing that was really interesting that came up during the pandemic when everyone was people were doing a lot of these kind of panel discussions online was those imperceptible delays, those millisecond delays between people conversing that actually had huge effects on body language and how people kind of experience the conversation. So I think we all can agree that the panel discussion was fine, but the say networking events where you're in a room having a few drinks, refreshments with people and trying to chat, that didn't work very long. It just we didn't find a way to do it.
Some events did.
Yeah, but I think it was one of those things where those kind of imperceptible delays really affected it, and the idea of like us, say, being taught by an AI sort of professor, those delays where you ask the question and it says, I'm thinking, here's the answer. That would just completely destroy, I think, the experience.
Yes.
So hopefully, it's not going to be too pervasive in that sense.
Well, I don't see why anybody really wants that, to be honest. It's not real teaching. The whole, as you just said, the whole thing is about engaging and interrupting, and it's just normal human
Challenging,
conversation.
yeah.
Exactly. And then when it loses its fluidity, as you just said, it gets quite tiring quite quick. So I'm hoping that what you just said, it doesn't come true. It's all out of job about so much AI at home,
Yeah, well, maybe we need to do another one of these panel discussions in a few months, regularly updating AI situation. Yeah, just mark our words. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for being here today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you to the people viewing online, or if you're viewing the recording, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to Clevertouch for hosting us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. But until then, thank you again to the panelists, thank you to Clevertouch, and we will see you soon. Bye.